This video is dedicated to James Humphreys. James, thank you. Hylda of the Icy Crown versus Hinata, Gahiji and Hazazon. No ramp there. Enlightened Tutor could get us into it though, but we don't have any kind of tapping down effects. And we'll keep this because we could go for the crown with Enlightened Tutor. Should be plenty of creatures to tap down against Hazazon. We're also last in the turn order, which gives us a better chance of having creatures to tap. Alright, talked it up apparently, drawing into Hylda's Crown of Winter straight away, so does that mean that we go for some fast mana in the Sol Ring? We'll hold up the Scalding Tarn just in case we decide to do that. Suppose we could go for Mana Crypt for a turn 2 Hylda, although Lightning Greaves first would probably be a better idea. Speaking of ramp, into the north from Hazazon. Alright, I played a previous game with this Hinata player and it is a fairly spiky deck. I asked for power level 5 to 6, so I'm hoping that we don't get absolutely everything countered here. The Enlightened Tutor going through pretty quickly, so still could have our Sol Ring countered though. Right, so we're at least allowed to draw into it, of course. A Darker Wastes can tap for colourless to save us some pain. And yep, holding up priority over here, deciding to allow it down. We can go in for the Lightning Greaves as opposed to the Hylda's Crown. And yep, there you go, a Dovin's Veto. I actually said in the last game that it's difficult playing next to a control player because they do tend to just counter the first thing they see from the next player. Not saying that this player is doing that, but I'm also not certain against a couple of red and green players that Lightning Greaves is worth a Dovin's Veto. Anyway, retreat to Emeria is probably going to make tokens. In fact, they'll make use of both of the abilities there. Brimaz, King of Oreskos. Lantax comes down for the Jeskai player. And then into a Jeweled Lotus, so seeing the commander here. At least he's not holding up counter magic for us. Unless it's a Force of Will or something. Alright, a Feeling of Dread is a decent means of making some tokens with our commander, so we'll try and land it. Play the island first so that we don't have to take a pain land. A token being made on landfall for the Naya player, noteworthy that there is a Hall of Heliod's Generosity in play. And there is the third commander, Hazazon, followed by a Farseek, down to 4 cards in hand, but doing well on mana over there. And making another core ally token with that. It's a Leonin War Leader from what looks like a Cat Tribal deck so far, but they're likely just going for a tokens Anthem build similar to the other Naya player. Grand Arbiter Augustine IV going to make our spells cost 1 more. Alright, getting to a Nimbus Maze. We do control both an island and a plain, so no reason not to get that down. Alright, so do we want Hylda's Crown of Winter in play? Or maybe get that in play next turn so that we can play it for 6 mana and draw a bunch of cards? That would be an option. Yeah, let's go for Hylda's Crown of Winter now actually. And then we can use the token thing as a combat trick, or maybe scry 2 and draw if we decide to do that. Alright, another land that is... yeah, that's not a desert actually, so... Field of the Dead coming into play. They are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, just 1 land away from starting to trigger field. Made a token regardless, thanks to the enchantment. Alright, another 2 mana ramp spell here. It is Nature's Law this time. So let's see if we can see Rampant Growth and 3 visits by the time this game ends. And that is enough to trigger the Field of the Dead for a zombie token and another core token. An Elvish Reclaimer after that for the Naya Lands Matter player. Alright, so we'll see if we see the Gahanji now. Because if we do, I'll probably just tap down the Leonin War Leader. Alright, it's an Ogre Battle Driver instead, so definitely want to tap this thing down because it's going to make more tokens. And that will trigger the commander, so we'll be able to go for a token here, I think should be fine. And that does mean that our opponent can't very easily attack in with the Brimaz. Might have been that our opponent forgot there and swung in towards us. So could have traded for an elemental token, but I'd rather just hold him back for now. A Midnight Clock for the Jeskai player into a Talisman of Creativity. Alright, so around to our turn, the first clock counter going on the Midnight Clock. Alright, and we get into a Reflecting Pool, so just throw that down. So I think we're just, trying to set up the Hylda's Crown, having a bunch of creatures that are tapped down. Can maybe go for this for 5 mana next turn. and then the Hylda's Crown sacrifice to refill our hand. I think that's the loose plan. So let's go straight down the middle at the Gahanji. Alright, now a Thespian Stage. Maybe should have tapped this down because he can get a Gaia's Cradle. But we'll leave him be for now. There's not necessarily much harming allowing a powerful player to get more powerful cards. Turns them into a threat and buys you a little bit of time. It's always a risk doing that though. Generous gift going on to the Grand Arbiter Augustin IV, which is fine with me. Might be that the token player turns in sideways this turn, and that would make the cracking of Hylda's Crown of Winter a lot better as well. Alright, yeah, and our opponent is searching for a land now with the Elvish Reclaimer. Wow, I'm going for the combo straight away here. That is a Dark Depths from our opponent. So, yeah, so much for power level 5 to 6. At least our opponent can't afford to go for it here. But for anyone who doesn't know, making Thespian Stage a copy of the Dark Depths and then keeping Dark Depths as the version that you want to keep out of the legendary pair means that you sacrifice this and get the 2020 Marit Lage token, not tapping down his creatures for an attack. At least we should be able to keep the Marit Lage tapped down. Just need to hope that the Naya player doesn't have haste available. Putting down the Stomping Ground tapped might suggest that the commander's going to come in. And that is a Crown of Doom. Whenever a creature attacks you or a planeswalker you control, it gets +2 to its power until the end of the turn. And then for 2 mana, target player other than its controller gains control of it. So making someone an enemy, encouraging someone like a token player to swing in a specific direction. And yep, handing the Crown of Doom over to us. So in exchange for that, we'll go for the Feeling of Dread onto the Leonin. And we'll just go after the Hazazon as well. So those creatures get tapped. We can pay into the Hylda. So say yes. And we'll make another 4/4. So yeah, if I'd worked it out properly, could have activated the Hylda's Crown of Winter on our turn to tap something down. And then made another token, because at the moment this 1 mana is going to waste. But yeah, if we feel as though this is going to come flying in towards us, maybe could tap that down. And that might be an idea actually. I don't fancy taking 6 commander damage to Hinata. So we'll wait for the Jeskai player to untap here. Our opponent's starting with 7 cards in hand, shocking down a Steam Vent. And there we see a Smothering Tithe. We know that 3 of the 5 cards in his hand are basic lands from the land tax. So don't have to worry as much about counter magic and things. We'll see if Hinata does attack us here. We might be taking 6 commander damage for nothing, because obviously could have tapped that down. Alright, and decides against swinging in towards us. So if I leave his stuff alone here, he might not counter our things, as eager as he was to counter that Lightning Greaves at the beginning of the game. We'll go after the Brimaz, because I can keep swinging in over here if that happens. Alright, so we get into a Drum Bellower, which is good, means we can be more aggressive during the attacking phase. So we'll drop a land, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4. We can tap down the Hinata over here. Can do that for free. This isn't a tap ability, the second one, is it? No. Yeah, that makes hell of a difference, so you can use both the abilities in one turn. So the commander gets tapped down, we will put a mana into the Hylda, and let's make another elemental token. Then I think I want, before I do anything else, it's more likely that we resolve our stuff if we leave this player alone for now, which we don't want to do forever, but yeah, we'll definitely swing in at the middle Naya player here. And then after that I want to try and get down the Drum Bellower, and we're giving the artifact over to the Jeskai player regardless. If he counters the Spirit, then it looks like we've got an excuse to throw it over there, but we're looking to do it anyway. So knocking that player down to 21. Unfortunately, this does mean that we're not going to be able to activate Hylda's Crown of Winter. We will be able to flash back the Feeling of Dread. Maybe we don't need the Drum Bellower in play after all. Yeah, let's just, I think we can only do this during our turn. Activate only during your turn, yeah, so we'll put it under the control of the Jeskai player. And then it's 2 mana to flash back Feeling of Dread, and we put 2 mana into this to make some more tokens. Should be alright. We can do that during an opponent's turn. Yeah, not much point in... I misspoke before, I think. Even if we did this during the upkeep, they could still do it in response to us targeting this. So, yeah, not much point in doing it during the upkeep. We'll just see what he plays here and see if we actually want to tap anything down with our flashback effect. Okay, looks like I've started a bit of an argument in the chat here. I just reference the 2020 maybe coming down reasonably quickly in a 5 to 6 power game, and yeah, it's not the type of game that I was after, but I mean, hey, it's the age-old thing of what's casual, what's power level 5, what's power level 7, blah blah blah. But yeah, it seems to have sparked a little bit of a debate here. I was only really referencing the 2020 Indestructible, but there are white players at the table, so should be able to get rid of Marit Lage, I hope. Elvish Reclaimer being allowed to tutor again, and a land entered, so they did give a +1/+1 buff to some things here. And what land is it this time? That was the first desert, I think. So Dunes of the Dead. And they get a couple of tokens there as well, because that is a desert, so Hazazon triggers. Looks like +1/+1 off the retreat to Emeria again. So some 4/4 zombies and 3/3 core tokens. So I'm just going to ask my opponent where he's attacking here, because it is relevant. We'll be able to tap down a couple of creatures with Feeling of Dread. Tried to encourage my opponent over here with the artifact, of course, but not necessarily going to be persuaded by that. Okay, yeah, generic responses like that I'm not really interested in, so I'm just going to tap down his stuff now. Not going to keep my opponents waiting by nattering away in the chat. So tap down his commander, tap down the zombie. Alright, we've only got 1 mana left thanks to the Hinata ability. Spells that your opponents cast cost 1 more to cast for each target, so yeah, that cost us 4 mana. We'll make another 4/4 elemental token. Our opponent said in the chat that he wasn't going to attack us anyway, so yeah, I don't know why he answered like that. Just tell me that you're not going to attack. Now he's getting his creatures tapped down for no reason, seemingly. Okay, so going in towards the other Naya player, maybe spreading the damage around. Yeah, he's going to get massive buffs on his core army here. That is a 5/3. A series of 5/3 creatures going into the right, so maybe was persuaded by the Crown of Doom. In response, an hour clock being put onto the midnight clock, putting him a turn ahead with that. And we're hoping to draw a bunch of cards with this thing now that the Naya player is turning sideways. Chumping with an elephant, and the rest has to go through. Hinata plummeting down to 13, but does have a decent amount of cards in hand at least. Might be that the Smothering Tithe was paid for at some point, because he's only got 1 treasure. Gonna get a hell of a lot more when we crack this thing though. Now this does finally give the Gahaji a turn with his Leonin War Leader and the Brimaz. And we have to be wary of the tokens coming in with the Ogre Battle Driver in play. But this thing might eat a stun counter from the Share if it comes in towards us, which I imagine it will. We have been focused on this player a little bit, so I have to assume that he's gonna, come in at us as punishment. So everything's swinging in, including the Ogre Battle Driver we can definitely take out here. Probably take out the Brimaz as well. Might be that our opponent can do Indestructible or buffs or something. We only stand to lose out on elemental tokens though. So 2 tokens from the Leonin War Leader and 1 from the Brimaz. And the crown just gets better and better as our token friends decide to swing in. So yeah, huge life point swings here. All the tokens going in towards us as well. So block the Ogre Battle Driver and the Brimaz. Or do we just go after the Leonin War Leader? I think keeping the token in play is fine. So we go down to 26. Our opponent gains some life up to 19 thanks to the life linking tokens, which he still has in play. And maybe there's a board wiping coming here. Yeah, that is a martial coup, so just as the crown becomes relevant, we see the board wipe. It makes the game last a bit longer at least, I suppose. Still got this thing that we're facing down. Hinata being played once again, and still has control of the crown, which he'll have to put 2 mana into getting rid of during his turn if he does want to do that. Still 7 cards in hand, and this is going to trigger during this player's turn, so I don't know, maybe he doesn't like the cards in hand. Alright, and giving control of the crown over to Hazazon. So it's time to see if our commander gets countered. Getting into a land on turn 7 is good. Means that we have not missed a single land drop yet. So we'll go for our commander. And we're just going to have to hold up the Hylda's Crown of Winter again, I think, because we're going to have to consider tapping down the Dark Depths token that I assume is coming down at the end of our turn. And we can make a token ourselves in the process. Alright, our opponent's starting to actually give straight answers now finally. Letting us know that he is not going to swing in at us with the 2020. So one player seems as though he's going to be going down here, probably the tapped out player, which I'm in two minds about because I'd like him to tap down all these soldier tokens during an attack, which makes the Hylda's Crown of Winter better, but I think we've missed out on our chance to use that this game. Alright, so I think I'd rather he takes out the Hinata player here. So, yeah, he's got a full grip. He's going to have a full grip during this player's turn regardless. So I think I'd rather take out the player with more mana and more cards available. That also encourages the soldier tokens to swing in. Even if it's towards us, it means that they're tapped, and that means that we can draw more cards. Alright, yes, and going in towards the Jeskai player. So this assumes that the Jeskai player can't do anything. There could be bounce or exile involved here. And looks like he's got something. That is a Teferi's Protection, so survives a turn against the Marit Lage. That does mean that our crown won't see the Hinata as a tapped creature, so that could be relevant. We're showing that we're cooperating with this player though, which means hopefully he doesn't come in at us with this. Actually, I'm only just remembering the land tax. It might be that our opponent has I haven't been keeping track of that. Might just have a bunch of lands in hand. Zazon, Shaper of Sand into play with 2 cards available. And then playing another desert, this time it is Grasping Dunes. So just like that, recreating a board in no time thanks to all the landfall stuff. And then sacrifice the Grasping Dunes, putting a -1/-1 counter on one of the soldiers. Crown of Doom going towards us. Not particularly bothered if this player swings in with the 4 tokens towards us, because like I said, it does mean that we can sacrifice this and draw some. Gahiji coming into play for the first time this game. Alright, deciding not to tap his soldier tokens, leaving them back as blockers against the Sand Warriors maybe. So Midnight Clock, it was phased out previously, so now it's phased back in, it gets its final counter, and we'll shuffle everything around, getting a brand new grip of 7. So all the lands from the land tax are going to be shuffled into the library again. Archmage's Charm is going to gain control of the Marit Lage. So that comes in tapped over there. And we see a Soulless Jailer. Permanents in graveyards can't enter the battlefield, so that's useful against the desert player. And then an Urabrask Heretic Praetor. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of your library. And I think this is the one that hates on card draw for your opponents. Next time they would draw a card this turn, instead they exile the top card of the library. Well, tapping out at least, there is a Dranith Magistrate as well. So a card gets exiled off the top with Urabrask, and it is a land, so yeah, drawing into lands consistently at least, but need more than this. So I'll tap down the Hinata, pay into Hylda of the Icy Crown. I'm going to go for Scry 2 and draw, seeing as how we're not really getting into anything here. Okay, just a couple of lands on top is about right. And just draws us into an Otawara, awesome. So we'll play the Share, and yeah, I'm just going to have to put a stun counter on the Marit Lage, although we could go for the Otawara onto that. So yeah, let's go after the Urabrask instead. It's going to cost us 2 mana for the Otawara now. So maybe not putting the mana into Hylda would be an idea. We'll see what we draw with the Share first. Need to actually get rid of the Crown of Doom as well now that I think about it. Okay, and just get into another land, so yeah, if that's all we were going to draw into off the Crown, then maybe it's good that I missed out on it previously. So yeah, if I get the Crown of Doom over to this player and then this player goes down, this should get exiled with him, and it takes it out of play. It also encourages the players to go wide over here as well. So let's put mana into the Hylda, make another token. Then it can be Crown of Doom going over here, and we'll make them chump our commander. Oh, and scooping, alright, that is, yeah, that's a really bad scoop. I'm going to have to ban the player for that, because that totally changes. If our opponent had actually scooped at the beginning of our turn, or even at the end of his turn during his own turn, then that would have changed the way I played out my entire turn here. So that's, yeah, that feels bad. Okay, I'm actually being allowed to pull back here because of we're still in the attacking phase, so I can choose not to attack. The Crown got moved over, so we've wasted 2 mana on the Crown of Doom as well. Awesome. So yeah, that scoop has totally warped the game now. Yeah, we just have to hold back these blockers and hope that these two are going to go in at each other. The Marit Lage was dealt with at least. I suppose we could hand the Crown over. Yeah, we Wasted 4 mana on this thing now. A land being played into Field of the Dead, and Hazazon, that must have been... Oh yeah, the Grasping Dunes can now be played as well, again thanks to that player scooping. So making a couple of Sand Warriors and a zombie, giving an Anthem effect with the retreat to Emeria until the end of the turn as well. Alright, so the Crown of Doom has been put back on our side of the field by this player, and swinging in some things at us in order to buff the creatures. Not going all in at the other Naya player though. If we could actually get into some mass means of tapping down, then yeah, we might actually be able to do something this game. Need to stop drawing into lands if we can. Alright, so we're each getting 2 attacking creatures at us. That is a 7/3 zombie and a 6/2 core, so yeah, I mean we have to block there. Argument to be made for us not killing off the creatures so that we can draw more cards. So if we put a 2/3 on the 7/3 zombie, that won't die, but an elemental on this will kill it. So we don't lose any life. This player goes down to 17. A Grasping Dunes puts another minus counter on one of these, so down to 2 soldier tokens. Alright, that's a good one, a Dragon Broodmother. So passing the turn at that with a Swords or a Path potentially held up. Dragon Broodmother triggers at the beginning of the turn. Maybe could have bounced that with the Otawara, that might have been an idea. And with that, deciding to devour both of the soldiers, so that comes down as a 5/5. You'll never guess what we draw into. Alright, so let's get down the Demolition Field. Could maybe deal with the Field of the Dead. Let's tap down the Dragon token. We can put a mana into Hylda. That will make us another 4/4. And then we can just draw 4 cards to the crown and see if we can actually get into something this game. Okay, well that gets us into a Cyclonic Rift. Elvish Mariner is good as well. Farewell, so we get into 2 of our board wipes. And we've got 7 mana held up for the Rift, so I'm going to ignore the Crown of Doom here. And we'll see if our opponent wants to trade out these tokens for an Elemental token. Get a +2 buff to power for doing this. I want to have the maximum amount of mana when we go for Elvish Mariner, because we can go for Scry 2 and draw on every single activation of this, and that will allow us to tap things, and it's a bit of a combo while you've got a decent amount of mana. And obviously we've got the Cyclonic Rift held up. Our opponent deciding to take the damage, so that's fine. Finally going south of his starting life total. Could always hold off on the Cyclonic Rift. I mean, obviously I'd rather go for the Elvish Mariner, make a bunch of tokens, and then Rift at the end of someone's turn and we can turn in sideways for an Alpha Strike, but it all depends on how this player attacks, really. Could bounce something with Otawara. Wayward Swordtooth makes additional lands every turn, allowing our opponent to play lands into Field of the Dead. -1 counter goes on the dragon from the Grasping Dunes he just played. Obviously if we just go for Otawara, then we can go for the Demolition Field onto this Field of the Dead as well. It's not as threatening while we've got Cyclonic Rift held up though. So playing the Grasping Dunes again. That gives +1/+1 from the retreat to Emeria. So yeah, big creatures that we're dealing with here. -1 counter going on our commander. Not really that worried about that. And our opponent going in with the zombies to the right. Those are 4/4s. And then everything else swinging in at us suggests that yeah, these are going to get +4 to their power thanks to the commander and the Crown of Doom. So, I mean, that kind of forces our hand, doesn't it? It's still a massive tempo loss for our opponent. He can get his commander back in play, but we can Otawara that if we want to. So yeah, out comes Hazazon again at the end of the turn. Might even be worth just going for blowing up Field of the Dead and then exiling graveyards with the Farewell next turn. It's all just treading water is the problem. So there's the Dragon Broodmother again. Don't have the mana to go for the Otawara now. Findhorn Elves as well. The minus counter on Hylda means that we can't swing in towards Hazazon now. Dragon token being made by the Dragon Broodmother, and it does devour to make itself a 3/3. So there is a Theft of Dreams, bit too late for these effects now, but play out the Ancient Tomb should be fine. And let's look at going for the Elvish Mariner. And I'll go for the Otawara now onto the Hazazon. Then I think I do want to go for Demolition Field onto Field of the Dead. And we're still turns away from the Elvish Mariner, annoyingly. So our opponent manages to get into a Plains, we will go for a Plains as well. And then maybe we can hold off on the Farewell, give our opponent access to the Grasping Dunes still. Can't get rid of our commander with that. Yeah, maybe it is time to just try and pull the trigger on Elvish Mariner, but know that I did say that I should go for Farewell on getting rid of the graveyards here. I haven't really done anything this game, so it's about time that we did something. Give my opponent the crown, not much point in keeping mana up if there's nothing we can do here. Go for the drum bellower as well, just going to completely play into a board wipe. And then we can attack him with everything to the left. And we'll get +2 buffs to our attack thanks to the Crown of Doom. Obviously the commander isn't in play over here, so don't get +4 buffs to attack. Just need to hope our opponent can't fish that Field of the Dead out of the bin, seeing as how we've managed to forego the Farewell this turn. So finally getting our opponent down to below half the life total. He's stuck at 40 for a very long time that game. Obviously all of our stuff on taps thanks to the drum bellower at the beginning of the turn. So Hazazon into play as you would expect. Hopefully doesn't get rid of the Elvish Mariner with that Grasping Dunes. I mean, I was really just trying to do something different here because we haven't actually been able to do much of anything with our deck. Okay, and that is a Winds of Abandon, so we were always going to lose all our stuff apparently. I did say we were playing into a board wipe. This opens up the Farewell next turn at least. 5 basics gets us to ramp with the Winds of Abandon. And we've still got Field and Grasping Dunes in the bin as well, which is good. Not sure my opponent made any land drops there, did he? Gahiji, Honoured 1 back into play, so that will eat a Farewell most likely. And then Gideon, ally of Zendikar. Can we get rid of... No, we can't get rid of Planeswalkers with the Farewell, creating a Night token. I'm hoping we should be able to tap down creatures and get through to the Gideon, so... Alright, that is a Stroke of Midnight. That can just blow it up straight away, so... Play the island. Definitely go for a Farewell. And I think I'll even get rid of the artifacts here to finally see the back of the crown. So we'll exile everything here. There's no enchantments, but doesn't matter. Then get out our Hylda again. Not worthy that we can tap down the Ancient Tomb for just green mana, taking no life thanks to the Avamaya, and holding up the Stroke of Midnight, seeing what fresh hell awaits us on our opponent's turns. Retreat to Emeria back into play. Hopefully our opponent will just be top decking lands into that though. It shouldn't be as powerful this time around. A Scoot Swarm. Yeah, don't fancy playing against that. Need to pray that they don't have a land drop here. Like I said, it shouldn't be as bad as long as they're top decking into lands. Okay, there's a Roadside Reliquary, so they can sacrifice it to draw a card, but they do get a Scoot Swarm copy, so not necessarily a good target for the Stroke of Midnight anymore. And a Wayward Sawtooth for additional land drops. No cards left in hand though. So do we use Stroke of Midnight to blow up the Gideon? I mean, our opponent's got creatures he can swing in with, so I don't think it really matters now. Best to keep hold of it, I think. The Gahaji coming into play once again. 3 lands held up with 4 cards in hand. And that's an Intangible Virtue, giving tokens +1/+1 and Vigilance. So we want to top deck into something that isn't a land here, which we haven't had the best of luck doing this game. A Jaraga Tree Speaker, 2 cards left for our opponent, and a token from Gideon. So this does allow us to draw cards when these things start turning in sideways at least, thanks to the Theft of Dreams. We preferably get into a sleep or something so that we could do it this turn though. Okay, there's Solitary Sanctuary. So we'll play that out now, and I'm going to tap down the commander over here, and with the Hylda I'm going to go for the Scry 2 and draw to try and get into a sleep effect. Sanctuary puts a plus counter on its only available target, and wouldn't you know, 2 lands on top, of course there is. Well, I don't feel bad. Wow. And just draw into one. Jesus. Right, well I don't feel too badly about the deck not doing that great this game. If we just top deck into lands all game, then what else are we meant to do? Just going to have to hold back here. A desert being put into the bin by cycling, so that kills 2 birds with 1 stone. They play their commander here, they'll be able to do the whole desert thing. Won't be able to sacrifice it and keep making use of it like they were with the previous desert though. So in comes the commander. Argument to be made for blowing up a Scoot Swarm here, but like I said, I'd rather my opponents have more creatures to tap at this point. Plus the more creatures they have, the more creatures they can use to get rid of Gideon. So playing the tapped Cycling Desert will make a couple of Scoot Swarms, a couple of Sand Warrior tokens, and a Retreat to Emeria trigger, making another token with that as well. Alright, so the Dinosaur swinging in on its own for some reason. I'll definitely be trying to go wide on the Gideon. All they have to do is just throw an ally token in the way here. Throwing Jiraga Tree Speaker in the way instead. Huatli Warrior Poet this time, coming in for the Naya player, the other Naya player. And another Knight token being made. Then a 3/3 Dinosaur with Trample from the Planeswalker, followed by Hero of Bladehold, so our opponents have successfully built up their boards again. And the Knights have Vigilance, so they won't even tap down if they decide to attack here, which probably won't, there's no decent attacks. So no point using the Stroke of Midnight yet, I don't think. Argument to be made for getting rid of this actually, so that the tokens don't have Vigilance. Okay, and it's a land, because of course it is. Yeah, there's only 2 tap creatures, but do we just have to go for this at this point and draw into the other 2 lands that are on top of our library? Let's crack the Misty Rainforest so that we can slightly improve our odds of not drawing into a land. Oh, and this is actually target player, so yeah, it's just going to be a cantrip, unfortunately. Yeah, I think we have to just take it round another turn cycle, annoyingly. Yeah, I thought this was all creatures in play that your opponents control, but it's a target, target opponent controls, so not going to draw 2 cards with that. Just the 1 doesn't make it at all worth it. Not that drawing 2 with it is worth it. Just need to hope this player starts deciding to dedicate more creatures to the red zone. Arcane Signet, 1 card left, and that allows him to crack this so that he can draw a card, which is probably what he's doing here. Yep, drawing a card, does not control... Oh yes, he does control an enchantment, so draws 2 there actually. Wow, and then managed to get into another desert being cycled, so... Yeah, this is Azon deck working quite well for him this game. A Sol Ring, followed by Escape Shift, so what we should do here is blow up the Retreat to Emeria, because it's about to give a +1/+1 buff, God knows how many times, to the entire army. But I'm not against losing at this point, to be honest, because we're doing absolutely nothing and it's just miserable. So I think the best bet is giving them all the buffs and then hoping that they don't dedicate enough to the board against us, so then we'll be able to Stroke of Midnight an attacking creature and survive. And at that point they'll have tapped down a bunch of creatures ready for the Theft of Dreams, so I think that's the way out here. It's risky, but the only other means of us doing something is just hoping that we draw into something next turn and losing to an army of Scoot Swarms anyway. Sacrificing the vast majority of his lands here. We know he doesn't have Field of the Dead anymore. Dunes of the Dead being sacrificed makes a zombie. Okay, nothing too egregious here. High Market, a sack outlet, Cradle of the Accursed, makes a zombie and can sacrifice itself. 2 damage to each opponent with the Ramanap Ruins. Some dual lands, Sun-Scorched Desert, 1 damage to each player when it enters, and another desert in Painted Bluffs. Noteworthy they've got Reliquary Tower with just 1 card in hand. So time to see if our opponent manages to break the client with Scoot Swarm, but yeah, blowing up the Retreat to Emeria would have been the thing there. Alright, so +1/+1 on all the Retreat to Emerias. That is 2, 4, 6, 8 and 9. So yeah, can probably still go wide on this player. Yeah, so we see there some 10/10 Scoot Swarms. I think the Hazazon player absolutely deserves to win this one. 1 damage being dealt to us by the desert, more tokens being made by Hazazon and the desert's coming in. And unfortunately I'm the one with the lowest clock here, but I'm the one having to pass through the Scoot Swarm triggers manually here because my opponents have auto-yielded, and yeah, that means that it's going to crash the client if all 3 of us have auto-yielded, so yeah, my clock was low anyway, but if you wonder why it's even lower, then this is why. Alright, so beginning of combat, let's see if our opponent dedicates enough into the red zone against us. Only really needs to attack us with like 4 creatures. Yeah, looks like he's going to do enough here. He's going for a bunch of Sam Warriors against us, and a bunch of Scoot Swarms as well. So like I said, this player deserves to win it. I don't mind not blowing up the enchantment there, because we're both in top deck mode here. The game's gone on for ages, and it's likely that we just go down to Scoot Swarms next turn anyway. And then there's the Gahaji that we have to consider as well, so yeah, allow that to resolve. I think maybe having Vidalcan Orrery and Leyland of Anticipation in this deck might be an idea for things like Thief of Dreams or Theft of Dreams, because yeah, being able to play like that at instant speed might be handy. But it's just, yeah, it's too clunky a commander. A lot of people were really excited about this, and I don't see the allure personally. Commanders that rely on your opponents doing things aren't necessarily where you want to be, but we also had really bad draws this game, so can't exactly be blamed for not having the best game with Hylda. Alright, yeah, so we've got a couple of sand warriors swinging in at us and 3 scoot swarms, so there's nothing we can do here. We'll just take the damage. And there we go, our opponent goes down to -39, we go down to 38. And yeah, if you're excited to see Hylda, then I do apologise, but I mean, I can only play what I draw into, and we didn't draw into that much in that entire game, so hopefully you all enjoyed the video. If you want to see more from Hylda, if you want to see me attempt her again, then let me know. Yeah, I mean, it turns out that we were drawing into absolutely nothing there anyway. I'm not sure where all the tap effects have gone, but we certainly weren't drawing into them here. Will break is an interesting one, but obviously we need to be able to actually tap things in order for that to be relevant. So yeah, if you were hoping for a decent Hylda showing, then I apologise, but obviously I can only play what I draw into, so hopefully you all enjoyed it regardless. And if you want to see more from Hylda, if you want to see me attempt her again, then be sure to let me know in the comments section. I'm tribalkai. Thank you for watching.